I'm Fletcher Fox, and welcome to my kitchen, where I am the Night Baker. Today's episode is going to be a bit of an experiment. It's something I've never really done before, unlike the last time where I'd done it once before. I have this incense. It's a king cake scented incense from Wildberry. It's a very cinnamony, sugary smell with hints of agave nectar and raisins and stuff. It's a really nice smelling incense. Every time I burn it, it makes me really hungry. But king cake has always been a bit too bready for me. So I figured rather than making a king cake, I would make a cake based on the smell of the king cake incense that I burn. And so what I've done, I've decided to take a Caribbean rum cake recipe I found on the internet and modify it a little to make it more reminiscent of that incense. I've never made a rum cake. I've never modified a rum cake because I've never made one. So hopefully this works out. But first, we're gonna need some ingredients. We're going to need our good old friend flour, sugar, and salt, instant vanilla pudding mix, baking powder. Now this particular can of baking powder is at least 15 years old, so if this cake kills me, this might have something to do with it. Unsalted butter, vegetable oil, milk, 4 large room temperature eggs, spiced rum. I chosen Kraken because for one, it's the rum I'm familiar with, and everyone, and I do mean everyone, recommends it. Vanilla extract, and some butter rum flavor. I believe this butter rum flavor is roughly as old as my baking powder. That smells delicious. This tiny vial is 4 times strength. It calls for a 1/4 teaspoon of this stuff. I'm probably going to use, I'll use a 1/4 teaspoon. You know me, I like adding extra flavor to things. Now there are a few changes I'm going to be making to this recipe. For one thing, I'll be adding cocaine. I mean raisins. I ate raisins all the time as a kid. I loved raisins as a kid, and then I don't know, somehow I guess I just forgot that I liked raisins and haven't eaten them since. I blame oatmeal raisin cookies. Those things left me feeling betrayed. How could you, raisins? I loved you. You were like a brother to me, raisins. Damn you, raisins! But yes, we will be adding raisins to the cake. Agave nectar, probably in place of some of the sugar because it is a sweetener, but I did want to go as close to the incense as possible, and agave nectar is one of the ingredients in the incense, so I'm going to be using some of this. How does this smell? So give me just a second, I want to taste some of this. That's a very unique flavor. I like it quite a lot. It's very mellow. The sweetness is overpowering, like to an unpleasant degree. This stuff is really good for your blood glucose levels if you're diabetic, but it's really terrible for your health in general because it's pretty much pure fructose. I'll also be adding cinnamon. Now, you might be thinking, but Fletcher, cinnamon is one of the spices in spiced rum. And to that I say, I don't care. I also want to make a kind of cream cheese glaze to top it with. I'm probably not going to be able to film myself actually glazing it tonight because it does have to cool overnight. But you will see me making this glaze and glazing the cake. I promise you that. And I also figured since I'm trying to modify a rum cake into some sort of king cake-ish cake, I might as well make the glaze Mardi Gras colors. I had purple food coloring. I do not anymore. But I'm a graphic design student and I know how color theory works. Green and yellow make purple, right? How much sugar does this call for? A lot. I'm gonna say I'm gonna replace maybe a 1/4 cup of the sugar with this agave nectar, because this stuff is potent. I'm gonna say 2 tablespoons. That may be a lot. I don't have a justification for that. I'm sure you expected me to say, that may be a lot, but no, I don't have anything. I'm throwing cake against the wall and seeing what sticks. First, with our single and only measuring cup, the 1/2 cup, our trusty lone soldier, we're going to take 2 cups of all-purpose flour. Half a cup, 1 cup. Next, we add 1.5 cups sugar to the mixture. Now, I'm going to cut out about 1/4 cup of that, which is honestly kind of lucky, because I happened upon my 1/4 cup measuring cup. I guess it was in the sugar the whole time. Didn't I use the sugar last night? I'm going to cherish this. 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, 1, 1 1/4. Now here's the part where we add the pudding mix. Apparently this keeps the cake moist and soft. Otherwise it dries out. There are some alternatives to this, and I just forgot to put in the agave nectar. Give me just a second. This is supposed to be the stage where we add the dry ingredients, but I'm gonna add 1 wet ingredient at this stage. The vanilla pudding, as I was saying before I realized I had forgotten an ingredient, is supposed to keep the cake moist and soft. There are other ways of doing this according to the recipe, but it says none of them are quite the same. You get such a delicious moistness from the vanilla pudding that you just don't get anywhere else, and that's probably because it's mostly gelatin. One thing I love about this tin of baking powder is it's got a place there to scrape off the spoon, level it off, so I don't need my trusty knife from Nam. The recipe calls for 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 teaspoon salt, 1/2 cup unsalted butter, which, let's see, a whole stick of unsalted butter, which I have let thaw and soften at room temperature. Next we add the vegetable oil, and we mix at medium speed. Already this smells amazing. And I have put basically none of the flavor in there except the agave nectar. Next, like a mad fool, I'm going to add about 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. Now it's requiring me to beat things in, so I'm going to do away with the whisk attachment for now and throw on this little number. It calls for 1/2 cup of milk. Somehow that seems like too little, but what do I know? This is my first time doing this. That immediately changed the consistency. Now it looks like that kinetic sand stuff. Now here's the part where things are probably going to get messy. It says to beat the eggs in 1 at a time. I got quite a bit of the egg white on the outside of the mixer. Egg number 2, let's hope I do better this time. I guess I gotta throw this out and start over, which is incredibly disappointing. Luckily, I bought enough of all of the ingredients to make this recipe 2 times over, and I only got about halfway through, so it wasn't that much of a loss. Huh, would you look at that? The recipe actually says right here, accidentally toss half an eggshell into the batter, discard, repeat from step 1. I give Fail Army explicit verbal permission to use that clip in a compilation. I have 1 more packet of pudding. Okay. So start over. Now this time, I've learned from my mistakes, and I will be cracking the eggs individually into a separate cup. And voila! I have not ruined my second attempt. Now here's where I'm going to add the raisins. I'm just going to add a couple healthy handfuls. Raisins. 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 And our last handful of raisins. One more couldn't hurt. Or two. I really like raisins, you know? Damn you, raisins! Just fold them in, get it nice and raisiny. Now we break out the rum. This is the good part. So the recipe calls for half a cup of this delicious dark liquid. Oh, this is a new bottle of vanilla extract. The next step involves a bundt cake pan, which is not something I had until tonight, surprisingly. And I'm just gonna spray this with a non-stick cooking spray as per the instructions. We're going to stop the mixer. I may have had a little too much rum, which I didn't have very much. The next step is to pour this lovely batter into this bundt cake pan. Probably should have saved drinking the rum for after the shoot. I will have you know that I'm one hell of a lightweight when it comes to alcohol. I'm not going to lie, I'm more tipsy than I have any right or reason to be from that one shot of rum. While that's baking, there are two things I need to make now. One is a rum syrup that goes into the cake once it's baked, and the other is a glaze that I'm going to put on top when the cake is ready to serve. So first, let's actually make the glaze because I'm gonna need the stove for the syrup, and I don't want to move my camera right now. So this glaze is also kind of an experiment, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a block of cream cheese, the other half of that stick of butter from when I made that loaf of bread, a whole can of sweetened condensed milk, a tablespoon of the agave nectar, and a teaspoon of cinnamon. And I'm going to mix it with this handy dandy old hand mixer that's almost as old as my mom. That is one of the best things I have ever tasted in my life. This will be refrigerated, and then it will be reheated later to be drizzled on top of the cake. Now I'm going to try my best to separate this out into 4 equal portions and color 3 of them purple, gold, and green, and leave the 4th portion just the plain cream color. And we're gonna drizzle these on top of the cake when it's done. Alrighty, so I've got the glaze separated out into 4 roughly equal amounts. I'm gonna put the lid on this one because it seems to have the most, and we'll set that aside as our plain colored glaze. That leaves us with 3 glazes that we can give a little color to. I should note, it is nowhere near Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras was months ago. So, the next stage in the process is to make the syrup. I need a whole stick of butter, 1/4 cup water, 1 cup of sugar. That's where things get a bit iffy. I don't know if I have a full cup of sugar. That's all the sugar I've got in here, and that's barely half a cup. The only sugar I have left is confectioner's sugar, but it's all being melted down anyway, so this should be fine. 1/4 teaspoon salt and a 1/2 cup of rum. And then it says to bring them to a rapid boil, so I'll put it on high. Bring it to a rapid boil without stirring. I should put the lid on this. Bring it down to a simmer for 5 to 7 minutes. Ooh, that alcohol smell really hit me. And we'll let that sit until the cake is out of the oven. All right, now the cake, the syrup, and the glaze are all done. And it's time to introduce the cake and the syrup together. Now I've let the cake sit here and cool a bit, and the next step is to poke a bunch of holes in the bottom, which you can see I've already done. And then drizzle this syrup in and let it soak in. So let's do that. Okay, now that we've got our butter rum syrup soaking into the cake, we're going to cover this up and leave it for 8 hours. So I'll see you 8 hours from now. Alright, it's been a little over 8 hours. It's no longer nighttime, but that's not going to stop me. We've got our cake, the syrup has fully soaked in, and I'm just going to carefully invert it onto this cake stand here, if it will come out. I did spray this with copious amounts of non-stick spray, but it doesn't seem to want to come out. Well, there's half of it. How do I get the other half out? With absolutely no difficulty at all, we have removed the cake from the pan. And now, all that's left to do is to glaze it. On the whole, I think it turned out pretty well. I think it would look better if I hadn't accidentally burned the yellow glaze just a little, but I think it looks fine. I'm not going to taste it now. I'm actually saving this for guests later, but I'm sure it'll taste great. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay tasty, my friends. Hey everyone, this is Fletcher Fox. I really hope you enjoyed this episode of The Night Baker. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and if you want notifications every time I post a new video, click the little bell icon next to the subscribe button. Thanks for watching. Have a great time, and stay tasty.